Hello. This is Alex speaking to you. I invite you to watch and listen to a new author story on my channel.
With my wife, we've been together for 6 years. Everything in our life is fine. We have a 1.5-year-old child. My wife is a very beautiful woman. She has a splendid figure with long legs, a neat small first-size breast, and velvety soft skin. I loved her very much. Very deeply, you understand? But now, the main thing is that my wife used to work in a private shop. Why a shop? I'll tell you, because in a company where there's no friendly and responsible team, it's rotten. I can't name the company. How did I come to this conclusion? I'll tell you now. How I didn't want to let my wife go to the corporate party. How I didn't want it, as if I felt that something would happen. All her preparations 2 weeks before the corporate party, trips to the store, choosing a dress, shoes, and even perfume. She chose the perfume herself. I didn't like the scent, but my wife insisted. But you won't be there anyway. And the scent is only needed until the evening, and in the evening, I'll come back straight away. The dress my wife chose had a very revealing cleavage. I didn't like all of this. My wife, on the other hand, playfully claimed that she loves me, and she wants to make an impression on her female colleagues, who, by the way, we argued about. Who will look better? We bet a box of expensive chocolates. It seemed like a simple celebration. The team was planning to celebrate New Year's from 4 in the afternoon until 11. That's how it's become customary to celebrate now. Moreover, I had no reason to doubt my wife. She never gave me any. On December 30th, I gathered my wife, and a taxi came to pick her up. I saw her off, and she left, leaving me with the child. When she was tying her scarf, I asked her one last time. Are you sure you won't reconsider? My wife said she couldn't stay. It would reflect badly on her work reputation. Her boss didn't like refusals, and it would negatively impact her career progression. Of course, my wife was earning a decent income. I, on the other hand, worked at a government institution, and while I had a stable income, it wasn't as substantial as hers. When my wife left, I thought, all right, I'll have some fun, relax a bit. She had attended company-organized events before, and I had let her go. But this time, there was a strange feeling of emptiness inside me. Anxiety and a sense of impending doom. It knocked me off balance. At around 10 in the evening, I called my wife. She picked up the phone. I asked my wife when she was planning to come home. I had to shout into the phone as loud music and cheerful noise made conversation difficult. She said they had decided to continue celebrating, and she would be back about 2 hours later. Through all the noise, I could make out that someone was persistently calling my wife to dance. But the appointed time came, and she still hadn't arrived. When I tried calling her, her phone was turned off. She only came back in the evening of the following day, just 4 hours before the New Year. She was disheveled and reeked of alcohol. She slurred her words and tried to kiss me. Throughout the entire time she was gone, I had not slept, waiting for her. I called her every 15 minutes, and her friends, acquaintances, and relatives called her, but there was only one phone she answered, her coworker's. He was the one who had called her persistently to dance. I decided that if she didn't return by New Year's, I would go to the police. As a precaution, I had taken our child to my mother's. When she walked in, the first thing I asked her was why her phone was turned off. My wife widened her eyes, feigned surprise, and said, "What do you mean turned off? I've been wondering why you haven't been calling." She said she hadn't turned off the phone, and it must have accidentally turned off by itself. I quickly took a shower, and my wife immediately went to the kitchen to start cooking. I had already prepared most of the dishes. We just needed to mix the salads and decorate them. While she was busy in the kitchen, I kept trying to find out from her where she had disappeared to, why she had been drinking and away for just a few hours. But my wife kept saying that we would talk later. The whole New Year's Eve, I was on edge, even though my wife tried to cheer me up. She talked about love, our child, the future. She even climbed onto my lap and tried to be affectionate. I could see that my wife was putting on an act. It didn't seem natural, as she had never behaved like that before. I realized she was hiding something. After 3 glasses of champagne, my wife got tipsy, but I didn't drink at all. I had a slight sip of whiskey when the clock struck midnight. Around 2 in the morning, my wife said she was very tired and was going to bed. I didn't wake her up early in the morning. I knew where she had celebrated the holiday and decided to go there. While driving, I deliberately turned off my phone. An hour later, I arrived at the location. It was January 1st, and there was very little traffic on the road. I found the head of security, a beautiful woman in her 50s. We had a conversation with her, and she told me that yes, the company was celebrating New Year here. They hadn't gone home because they had not only rented the restaurant but also hotel rooms. Everything had been paid for in advance. However, they refused to show me the security camera footage, claiming it was confidential. But, as you know, I am persistent, and when I set my mind on something, I can overcome any obstacle. I found a security guard who, for a certain amount, showed me and transferred all the necessary footage to a flash drive. I assured him that the video would not go any further than me. Yes, I saw my wife, and she wasn't too drunk. I saw how she walked to a room with a man who was holding her waist tenderly. I saw how, stopping in front of the room, they kissed passionately. I saw how they entered the room. I saw how, after about an hour and a half, the man came out of the room and returned 10 minutes later, but he was not alone, he had brought another man with him. The video inside the room was somewhat obscured since the camera was in the hallway and only captured part of the room. But it was enough. I saw my wife with one man at first, then with another. I saw one of them leave and bring the other. I saw her with the one who arrived later. And then I saw something unimaginable. My wife with herself, can you believe it? In between these episodes, they were drinking and talking about something. They kissed gently and then returned to their activities. I had been watching all night. The men left my wife's room closer to 11 in the morning, the next one even later. First one, then the second delayed, with the second one coming half an hour after. After an hour, my wife also left the room and went to the rooms rented for her colleagues. She had to ring the bell for quite some time before they let her in. 10 minutes later, one of the men came out of the room. The women did not leave the room until the evening. Men and women came to their room, but no one entered. They talked about something at the door of the room. The last shots were from outside, where my wife and her colleague got into a taxi. On the way back, I drove like a maniac, narrowly avoiding accidents a few times, but I managed to stop in time. I arrived home at night and spent the evening reviewing the video, skipping through the unnecessary parts. My wife greeted me with anger at first, but when she looked at me, her anger turned into concern and hurt. She asked me, with a tone of resentment, where I had been and why my phone was unreachable. I said that no one had called me, and I took out my phone and turned it on. I told her that I hadn't turned off the phone. Apparently, it had turned off by itself, and I pretended to be puzzled, saying that I had also wondered why no one had called me. That's when I first saw confusion and tension on my wife's face. I could tell she was contemplating something. So I asked her if she wanted to tell me the truth, where she had been all night, honestly. My wife said that at the corporate party, she had overindulged in alcohol, and they left in the evening after the party ended. She fell asleep in the taxi, and her friend brought her to her friend's house. She stayed overnight there, and it was very cold, and her colleague was very insistent. She couldn't leave from her colleague. I asked my wife if she was telling me the truth. She said, with fear in her voice, that it was the absolute truth and she had no reason to lie to me. So I suggested going to visit this colleague to thank her and also to wish her a happy new year. My wife said she wasn't ready, that she was feeling unwell, and that to visit her colleague, she needed to do her makeup and get dressed. Her colleague had said that on the first day, she was going to visit her parents and spend the rest of the holiday weekend there. Then she would come to our place. She didn't want to watch a new adult movie with her in the leading role. That's when she got really scared. She said she had no desire to watch anything. So I went, took my laptop, and transferred all the video footage. When I returned to the bedroom, my wife was quietly crying. I played the recording and left the laptop on the bed in front of her. She started sobbing and began speaking incoherently, saying that she didn't want it, that she had been assaulted. That's when I suggested she go to the police to file a report. Of course, she refused. She started saying she had drunk too much, didn't know how it happened, that it wasn't true, that she loved me and our little one. She asked me not to jump to conclusions, mentioning that we have a child, and he needs a stable family. I silently gathered my essential belongings into a bag and started packing. My wife sat there, frozen, staring into space, and she had that same blank look when I walked to the door. She begged me not to leave, to stay, apologized, tried to kiss me, grabbed my jacket so tightly that it took considerable effort to pry her off, leaving my jacket torn. I left, called my mom and asked her to keep our child at her place until the end of the holidays. I told her to answer my wife's calls and not give my child away under any circumstances. I said I would explain everything later, that I needed some time alone. I also suggested to my mom that it might be best for her to go to her sister's with our child. I booked a hotel room, ordered food from a local restaurant, lay in bed watching the TV, drinking and snacking, replaying moments of my life in my mind. Then I drifted off into a drunken slumber and was woken up by the phone during the day. It was my wife's sister, inquiring when my daughter and I would visit them again. I told her that we wouldn't be able to make it, and that was all. When I returned home after the holiday season, I didn't find my wife at home. I noticed that some of her things and her suitcases were missing, along with her documents. A year has passed, and my wife hasn't contacted me, although I know she periodically calls her parents. She also calls my mom to ask about our child's well-being and whether he needs anything. She says she wants to visit, misses our child greatly, and wishes to see him. She has never called me even once, but for some reason, I'm still waiting for her call. I'm trying to forget it all. It's a difficult path, but I'm trying. It's hard to erase someone from your life whom you love and can't forget to this day.
Write a comment what you think about this story. Be sure to subscribe to my channel. See you soon.